So you're thinking of building an Exocet or any other kit car that uses an MX-5 as its donor? Well, as you can see, I've already made one. And I'm going to use all the experience that I've gained whilst building this car to make a video to show you exactly how to build one for under £4,000. Right, well, let's start with buying a suitable donor car. Now, MEV say that you can build an Exocet for 2k plus VAT. But this works on the principle that you can sell lots of the stuff off the donor car that you don't need, and this will offset the cost of the build. Well, a couple of years ago that was easily possible, but the Exocet has become a victim of its own success, in as much as so many MX-5s have been broken to build them that the parts market has become flooded, thus seriously reducing selling prices. I personally think that £4,000 is a good price to go for a budget build. So the first thing you've got to do is get yourself a donor. Now, don't do what I did. I bought a non-runner and it caused me all sorts of problems. So make sure you get one that actually drives. There are lots of Mark 1s going very cheap nowadays, though you have to consider it will be difficult to sell on the spares, which will make it difficult to reach your £4,000 budget. Also, even the youngest ones will now be 14 years old. And a lot of people have had trouble when stripping down the suspension with seized bolts and nuts that shear off. And here's one I stripped earlier. Now, ideally, you'll want to get one that's only got about 100,000 or less miles on the clock. The engines are pretty tough, but they do wear after a while. And eventually the rings start to give out, losing compression and therefore power. For me, an early Mark II like this one, it's like a 99 with an MOT failure. This one's sills have gone and so has the wings, which is a common problem with these MX-5s, and therefore you can pick them up pretty cheap. This one was £800. I've driven several MX-5s to date, two of them with over 150,000 on the clock, and I've got to say I've always been impressed by how tight the suspension feels, even on cars of that kind of mileage, which kind of suggests that the stock Mazda bushes are pretty good units. An easy way to check the condition of the bushes is to use a crowbar to put leverage on each one. This is, after all, how they do it on the MOTs. And if there is no more than a couple of mil of movement, then they are fine. Also, you could check for the old MOTs and see if there's an advisory sheet. There is no mention of bushes. That should also be a good indication that everything is well. Other things to consider when buying are the bits you'll want to keep. To stick to a £4,000 budget, you really need to be using the seats and the wheels and tyres from the donor. So look out for donor cars with nice aftermarket wheels and seats that are in good condition. Aftermarket wheels don't seem to affect the value of a second-hand car, but will cost between £250 to £300 to buy on their own, so worth looking out for. It is at this point that it is a good idea to decide if you plan to completely strip the suspension and replace all the bushes with nylon ones, or keep the Mazda ones and paint the chassis. If you want to have the suspension parts powder coated, then you will have to remove the bushes. Though I would say that getting the suspension parts powder coated and replacing all the bushes would seriously stretch the £4,000 budget. So I am going to show you a cheaper way. Right, so now that you've removed the body and hopefully made some money back on the spare parts, it's time to start on the chassis. As this is a budget build guide, I will be working on the assumption that you've decided to leave the bushes in place. First off is to get yourself a wire brush attachment for that angle grinder that I'm sure you have, and start attacking the rust on your subframes and suspension. It's a tedious job, but worth spending time on, especially the bits that will be visible. You will never get rid of all the pitting that the rust leaves, but remember this is also true if you've had the parts sandblasted. Once you're happy you've got off as much rust as you possibly can, it's time to get on with the painting. My personal choice is to go for an anti-rust primer like Zinc 182, and then my favourite top coat being Johnston's Black Gloss exterior paint, which I find goes on smooth and leaves a tough, shiny finish. I'm about to refurb the chassis from the MX-5 seen in this video, and we'll be making a video of the process, so those who are interested in seeing how you go about doing a budget chassis refurb, then watch this space.